Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Binyamin, Tjong-Alvares with the top reports from the world economy. Coming up, the resilience of sexism in Silicon Valley. And TV's highest paid late-night TV personality steps down. First, the headlines. The world's top 20 economies meeting in Istanbul struggle to overcome divisions over the most suitable methods to raise global growth. G20 finance ministers and central bank chiefs acknowledged that global economic growth remained uneven and the recovery slow. Fiscal policy has an essential role in building confidence and sustaining domestic demand, but also served to divide Germany from the Eurozone's weaker economies. But the importance of unity was also highlighted by the need for greater transparency of payment systems to curb terror financing and money laundering.
The issue of small movements of cash or movements that are anonymized by specific transfer devices that allow terrorists to take action outside the combat zone on our territory in a country in Europe, Asia or America, which allows them to carry out their destructive work.
The EU sees little chance of resolving the debt standoff with Greece at meetings in Brussels this week, a European Commission spokeswoman said. Greece has pleaded for stopgap financing to clinch an austerity-free reform deal to run from September 1st, but its Eurozone creditors have so far refused. German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble said at the G20 summit in Istanbul, if Greece refuses a new aid deal, then that's it. Greek Foreign Minister Nikos Kotzias said his country needs different reforms from those agreed by the former government to help it emerge from its years-long crisis. Greece needs reforms against tax theft, tax evasion, and against an oligarchy that stole state income and state property, Kotzias said.
We in Athens believe that the policies in the last 5 years were a complete failure. We have a big social crisis in Greece. We have hundreds of thousands of people who live without electricity and without heating. We have thousands of people who have committed suicide. We have 1.5 million unemployed. The Greek government signed that we need reforms, but different reforms.
Kotzias also took his government's claim for World War II reparations direct to Berlin on Tuesday as an alternative source for covering Greece's debts. But Germany denies owing anything more to Greece for World War II after the 115 million Deutsche Marks it paid in 1960.
We, Germans, are fully aware of our political and moral responsibility for the terrible events between 1941 and 1944 in Greece. And Greece still has in good memory the speech of the German president in which he acknowledged it using the right words. Still, we are firmly convinced that all reparations issues, including forced loans, are judicially settled once and for all.
The U.S. Justice Department may seek charges against 4 major banks for collusion by traders in foreign currency markets. Employees of Barclays, Citigroup, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Royal Bank of Scotland allegedly manipulated foreign currency exchange rates to benefit their own positions. But the prospect of pleading guilty is causing less trepidation on Wall Street, as guilty pleas and fines by Credit Suisse and BNP Paribas last year did little to their bottom line. And despite record multi-billion-dollar fines against big banks, critics fault the government for failing to send any top executives to jail. Apple became the first company to reach a market value of $700 billion on Tuesday. Shares rose 1.9% to close at $122, lifting Apple's market value to $710 billion and making it the first company to hit that milestone. The tech dealer is far ahead in market value from the number 2 company, oil giant ExxonMobil, worth some $382 billion at market close. Apple posted record revenue of $74.6 billion in the fourth quarter, outstripping the quarterly GDP of Israel and Denmark. Venezuela's finance minister announced a new foreign exchange platform allowing for legal trading of foreign currency based on supply and demand. Venezuela will ease 12-year-old currency controls, marking a small step toward market economics while retaining the three-tiered exchange structure. The new CIMADI platform enables legal trading of foreign currency, allowing the market to determine the exchange rate. But while the new platform would heavily devalue the bolivar and strengthen state coffers while all revenues are low, it is also likely to spike already soaring inflation. The more we advance as a society using technological innovation to upgrade the world we live in, the more some things stay the same. A recent Newsweek story about what Silicon Valley thinks of women sadly illustrates how sex still gets in the way of professionalism. i24 News editor Karen Kirsch and i24 News journalist Daniel Roth join us now to discuss the persistence of sexism in a predominantly male work environment. Ms. Kirsch, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Binyamin.
And, of course, Daniel Roth.
How's it going?
So what exactly is the story here?
Well, it's the cover of Newsweek from last week. It's a very big and sort of lengthy piece, investigative piece, that checks the attitude of Silicon Valley towards women and also exposes what is, I would say, the less talked about element of gender in this
we can
environment.
see the cover actually.
Yes, we can see the cover, and the cover actually raised, it raised a lot of controversy by itself.
Yeah.
Is it too provocative? Is it just offensive? Is it using the same sort of elements that the actual story is trying to raise awareness for?
Right.
I think it is provocative, but you know, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I think it's provocative, but that's the point.
That is the point, right.
The reality in Silicon Valley is not good for women, and the discomfort we feel with the cover is the kind of discomfort women may feel in the workplace.
Yeah, and they actually gathered you know, quite a lot of stories and statistics and sort of, you know, really things that are tough to hear, whether it's a young executive that they interviewed and he was unnamed in the article who described gangbang interviews and how he was promoted by CEOs in the industry by sending them bikini shots that he gathered while in college. You know, it's very, very sort of, it's strong stuff. It's not it's not stuff that's you know, even debatable whether it's harassment or not. And there were quite a few sexual harassment lawsuits filed. One against one of the big venture capital firms in the Bay, where they alleged in this suit that they didn't invite women to the company sort of parties or whatever because they killed the buzz.
Yeah.
Women who were working in and this is stuff that's you know, on paper, suits that were actually, you know, filed and
No, in all fairness, are we talking about, I mean, mostly what you're talking about is executives and such. I mean, is this the older generation only? Do we have hope that things might change as, so to speak, our generation sort of moves in?
It's not the older generation. That's the tragedy. It's staying in the sort of it's staying in these sort of old hierarchies. Women are in the industry more and more, but when you're in a situation where out of the Silicon top 5 venture capital firms, they have no senior female executive, none.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's kind of a situation where it's tough to change this sort of.
Is this situation any different in a country like Israel, where we have the Silicon Wadi, so to speak? I mean, do we have cases like this in terms of sexism as well?
Of course we do. And sexual harassment is really, it's not an Israeli problem, it's not an American problem, it's an international problem. I think 2 weeks ago in one of the big security high-tech companies, CFO was semi-fired on these kind of grounds.
Semi-fired.
Yes, of course. That's the interesting thing, and in the past couple of weeks we see a very big Israeli story that's been going on, that's sort of rocking maybe the boat, which I hope maybe this story can do in Silicon Valley, and that's the police story,
Right.
where
Also predominantly male environment.
of course, and hierarchy and competitive and all very similar. It's very similar structures to when you think about it to Silicon Valley,
Right.
where you sort of what. The kind of education that you get in colleges and the way that you need to be promoted, and it's all very sort of masculine, geeky perhaps, but still masculine.
Would you say, from your perspective, that this has to be changed from within, or does it have to be changed from without?
It needs to be both. And one of the things that we see that's been doing very well in Israel, and actually happened in the Israeli army, is that processes that sort of organizations that have adopted this kind of policies and said, we're not just adopting them because we have to by the law, but we're going to actually internalize what it means to do gender mainstreaming and to promote women from within. I mean, to think about the Israeli police, who just recently got its first female commissioner, I mean, just recently as a response for this string of events where 7 high-ranking police officers were... they're still gathering the investigation.
I was going to say, I mean, like, Daniel, I mean, coming from outside, not being born in Israel, so to speak, I mean, would you have the impression that Israel is sort of your typical Mediterranean, Middle Eastern country, you know, not to offend anyone out there, you know, where women have sort of a lower level? Or would you say that because in Israel women are pushed into the army and are involved essentially alongside men in ways that you wouldn't necessarily see in the Western world, which one is stronger here?
It's a great question. It's a regional question within the country, I think. I think even in a city like Tel Aviv, you see different workplaces even. Depends where the people come from. And, you know, this place geographically is at the center of 3 continents. So you have people from all over coming together and these cultures kind of mixing. So you have kind of modern liberal culture mixing with conservative classic cultures, and sometimes that's explosive.
But I think that when you look at sort of the stories that were brought here in the Silicon Valley, you see that it's really not sort of a Mediterranean problem. It's still a very hierarchy, patriarchal kind of kind of an issue that is still very strong everywhere.
Right. Well, you know, we could probably continue talking about this for a while to come, but I want to just move on to a somewhat lighter subject. Daniel Roth, I believe you have a bunch of different stories here, talking, amongst others, about salaries in, of course, the TV world.
Yes, Jon Stewart blew the world away last night. Jon Stewart, the host of The Daily Show, saying he's stepping down. Big deal for a lot of people. He had been the host for 16 years, 1.5 million viewers a night, no small thing.
He was best paid, though.
Yeah, he is the best paid late-night talk show host in the world, perhaps ever. Jay Leno came close. At his peak, he was at about 24 million. Jon Stewart, somewhere between 25 and 30 million. A couple of years ago, he was making only 15 million. Only 15 million.
Yeah, of course. Did he have reasons for resigning? Or,
it's unclear. What he said last night was he's got an itch that the show deserves someone with their total undivided attention, and now Jon Stewart's kind of his attention is a little bit divided, which, for $25 to $30 million, you better bet that you need someone whose attention's undivided.
Could it be that he's just bored doing the same thing over and over again? I mean,
it's entirely possible. You know, one in the economy realm. An interesting memory is a couple of years ago when he took Jim Cramer down, the host of Mad Money. And, you know, Jon Stewart, on one hand, has an enormous amount of power, and he's incredibly intelligent. And he was able to sort of critique this host of a money show to the point where this guy, for months afterwards, was saying that the interview haunted him. And Jon Stewart, you know, recently said, I really felt bad about that, even though it was in the wake of the financial crisis.
Looking at him right now, actually, right there, as our viewers just saw, I mean, you know, he's talking, he has this charm,
Politics?
you know, money. Politics, perhaps? Is that the next calling for him?
It's possible. That's, like I said, he's a highly... It might be. He also directed a film last year. There's a lot of routes this could take. Honestly, if I had to think of something, he would be great commenting on social and economic policy.
Interesting.
We can't overestimate the influence he has on the way all of us and young people all over the world are consuming news these days.
Absolutely, and particularly, in the wake of the Iraq War and 9/11, he was incredibly important culturally. In the wake of the financial crisis in 2008, he really, it was interesting. He had a strained relationship with the Occupy Wall Street movement. Obviously strained relationship with the sort of right-wing version of that. But he was incredibly important in keeping the conversation going about the fact that it was not a mistake, this crisis, it was people's wrongdoing, and it's something that he's been doing for the last 6 or 7 years, is keeping that in the public eye, that the crisis was not a banking mistake, it was something that people really perpetrated.
Yeah. It's not just one sort of group of people that's responsible, so to speak.
Yeah. So for $25 to $30 million, I think he's done a lot of good work.
Okay. Well, Daniel Roth and Karen Kirsch, thanks for joining us on the show. That is The Economy Magazine for today, your daily source for economic and financial reports. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares. Thanks for joining us, and do watch us again tomorrow.